have such an amazing experience this morning. We have a former astronaut, like a real live astronaut, somebody who went to space, who's going to talk to us today. He is originally from Minnesota, which is far away from here, where he studied aerospace engineering. If you don't know what that is, you're probably going to learn about some of it today. He served our country in the Air Force for 22 years. Whoa, that's a long time. He's flown all over the world, and guess what? He has flown 35 different kinds of planes. What in the world? He has earned so many awards and medals. Guys, we have a real astronaut that's going to talk to us today. He joined NASA in 1996, and in 2002, he piloted the Space Shuttle Columbia on a mission to the Hubble Space Telescope. Have you guys been to space? I think we have one person with us here today that has been to space. After that, he worked at the Houston Mission Control and was there during the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster. In 2004, he retired to share this amazing story and inspire young people to explore the universe through math and science. Have you heard your teachers talking about the importance of math and science? Okay, so joining us live from Colorado Springs, Colorado, it's retired Air Force Lieutenant and Astronaut Colonel Duane Digger Carey. Good morning.
Thank you, Miss Bielik, for that great introduction. And you know, you guys are in Henderson, and we are in Colorado. And I would like to hear a big GV Christian cheer.
Okay. Well, okay, what are we going to say? Go Guardians? 1, 2, 3. Go Guardians! I think I'm going to move this so you can see them a little bit, and I'll move it back. Can you see them?
Whoa, look at all those kids. And you know what? That was such a good cheer. I think I could hear it coming in my windows.
Whoa.
Great job, you guys. Well, Miss Bielik, thank you so much for allowing me to have some time with your great kids this morning. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Miss Pat Townsend, who made this whole thing possible this morning. So it's just an honor to be here to talk with the great guardians of GV Christian. And so that was a great introduction. Thank you very much. And guess what, boys and girls? We're going to talk about space this morning. And since I'm an astronaut, we're going to talk about a space mission this morning. As a matter of fact, you guys are probably aware that anytime there's a space mission, that there's a team of thousands and maybe even tens of thousands of people who all work together as a team to make these missions possible. And I'm wondering if, Miss Bielik, I'm wondering if the kids at GV Christian this morning would like to actually go on a space mission, and we can talk about the kinds of teamwork that are necessary to pull off and accomplish these very complicated and, you know what, a little bit dangerous space missions. And luckily, I heard that, Miss Bielik, I've heard that the kids have been studying space real hard over the last few weeks. So I think we're ready to discuss a space mission, a real space mission.
That sounds great.
If we could pull up the slide that shows the Hubble Space Telescope floating in space. Great, I can see that off to the side there. Now, boys and girls, direct your attention to the screen with the satellite on it. Believe it or not, what you're looking at is a telescope. And not only is it just a telescope, but it's like the most awesome telescope that's ever been built in the whole world, in the history of mankind. It's like the coolest telescope ever. And we call it the Hubble Space Telescope. And the Hubble Space Telescope, before our mission, has been in space for about 10 years. And we want to put some new equipment inside the telescope to make it even more awesome than it already is. So let's think about what has to happen in order for astronauts to fly into outer space and fix the Hubble Space Telescope. Let's see, I can think of 5 major, what we call mission elements. You know, when you go on a complicated mission, you have mission elements, you have steps of the mission that you have to accomplish. First, step number 1, and then you do step number 2, and then you do step number 3, and so on until the mission is complete. That's how you accomplish complicated missions. And we're all going to work together as a team. Now, some of the kids in the audience perhaps are interested in being astronauts. And that's what I wanted to do because I thought being an astronaut would be fun and cool. But do you know, Miss Bielik, when I started training as an astronaut, I realized that the other people on the team, the space team, were in many ways a lot smarter than the astronauts because they had very complicated jobs. Some people on the team, it was their job to train the astronauts. And some people on the team, it was their job to make sure that the astronauts had proper nutrition and food during their missions. I wonder how many kids in the audience are like interested when they grow up, they're interested in being cooks or chefs.
Anyone
I think
in
there's
here?
probably a few kids in the audience that are interested in what we call the culinary arts. You know, people that know how to cook and put together menus and are smart about nutrition are very important parts of the space team. And then we have schedulers and we have controllers, people that work in mission control, and they're like the bosses during the mission. So we need all kinds of skills to pull off a complicated space mission. And Miss Bielik, when you look out over the kids in the audience, I think you'll find that every single kid in the audience has some type of skill or some type of interest that would be valuable to be part of any future space team. Now let's talk about what we have to do to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. Well, first of all, we're going to need to blast off and go into outer space. And this is a model of the spaceship that I flew on to go to the Hubble Space Telescope. It's called the Space Shuttle. And we're not flying the Space Shuttle anymore. We're flying different rockets now. But that was what we flew back in my day. So first we have to blast off and we have to find the telescope. That's not quite as easy as it sounds, boys and girls, because think about it, the telescope is in outer space, and outer space is bigger than your school, it's bigger than Las Vegas, it's bigger than the whole state of Nevada. In fact, it's bigger than the whole Earth or the sun. Outer space is huge, and our telescope is floating around the Earth, and it's about 350 miles up in the sky. And guess what? It's going 18,000 miles an hour. It can go from Henderson to downtown Las Vegas in about 1 second. It's going so fast. So you have to blast off in your spaceship and you have to find the telescope. And then after you find the telescope, you have to capture it with your robot arm that's mounted on the spaceship. You have to capture the telescope from outer space and put it into the back of your spaceship. That's a very complicated job, and we'll talk about that. Then the third thing you have to do is within the team of astronauts, there's 7 astronauts on the astronaut team, but 4 astronauts are what we call our spacewalkers. And they have to put on their special spacewalking suits, and then they go out into outer space with their wrenches and their screwdrivers, and they take old parts out of the telescope and put new parts in to the telescope. But not only is it kind of hard because you have to fix stuff, but to be a spacewalker, you have to be almost like an athlete who's in really good physical condition to go out there and work on that telescope, because it's very tiring work when you're wearing the spacesuit and doing work. Ms. Bielik, I think we have some kids out in the audience that probably like to fix things and probably are familiar with how to use tools like screwdrivers and wrenches and drills and stuff like that, and like to fix things. Those kind of kids would make very good spacewalkers, so they could be part of the space team. Okay, we're going to have 5 days of spacewalks that last about 6 to 7 hours each to work on the telescope. Then, after we're done working on the telescope, we want to release it back into outer space, because it's a space telescope and it's not meant to come back to Earth. It's meant to stay in outer space. So we have to release it back out into outer space. And then we're still in space, flying in our spaceship. And the next thing we have to do is we have to come home safely, because all of us astronauts have families on Earth, and we want to see our kids and our spouses, and we want to see our friends. So we have to come back to Earth safely. Luckily, we have a team of thousands of people that work for NASA and work for space companies that are going to assist us in each one of these steps. Now, I talked about the 5 steps that we need to go through to fix the telescope. We have to find it, we have to grab it, we have to fix it, we have to release it, and then we have to come back to Earth. Well, Miss Beasley, luckily, we have a special movie that takes about 15 minutes, and it takes us through all those different phases of this mission to the Hubble Space Telescope. And I would like all the kids to think about what skills or interests they have that they can bring to the space team to do these kinds of missions while we're watching the movie. If we could put the movie up on the screen so I could narrate it. I just barely see it in the background there. And if not, maybe just move the camera a little bit. I think I can see enough of the screen to narrate it. Boys and girls, what you're looking at is we're wearing orange spacesuits because we're going to fly into outer space, and those are specially designed to protect us. That's awesome right there. Perfect. And those are the members of our space team, and we're walking out to our Astro van so we can go out to the launch pad and get in the spaceship. Now we're getting in the spaceship, and luckily we have a team of specialists that help us get strapped into our spaceship so we can blast off. Now, boys and girls, getting in the spaceship is kind of complicated because it would be like getting in your car if it was standing up on its tail.
10, 9,
now we're getting ready for blast
8,
off.
7, 6, main engine start, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Carey to broaden our view of the universe through the Hubble Space Telescope.
Roll program.
Roger, roll, Columbia.
Now, boys and girls, I'd like to take a moment to talk about that spaceship you just saw blast off into outer space. Did you know that it took tens of thousands of people to build that spaceship. And did you know that lots of those people that built that spaceship never went to college, but they had skills. They knew how to weld, and they knew how to put things together, and they had the wonderful job of building that spaceship, and they did a great job. Not every kid in the audience is going to go to college. Many of you are going to learn skills after you're done from 12th grade. You're going to learn skills that you can use to build things and make things that are safe and not very and do dangerous things in a very safe manner. We need kids like that on the space team. We're going to talk about all kinds of skills we need on the space team. So here we are in space, and we found the Hubble. We found it with the help of our great helpers on the ground in mission control. And now it comes time to grab the spaceship, or grab this satellite with the robot arm. Did you see Miss Carey, Miss Nancy Carey, operating the robot arm? There she is. And did you know she trained an entire year to grab the telescope with that robot arm? She had one chance to do this because we were almost out of rocket fuel. She had one chance. And boys and girls, I would like to ask you why we wanted Miss Nancy Carey on our space team. Is because she was the world's best robot arm operator ever. And we needed her special skills on our space team so she could grab that telescope. And now she grabbed it, and now we were ready for mission element number 3. Our spacewalkers were going to go out and repair the telescope. So they put on their white spacewalking suits, and they went outside the spaceship, and they began working on the telescope. What you're seeing here is what it looks like from the helmet of the spacewalker's suit, because we have special cameras mounted in the helmets of our spacesuits. And did you know that the spacesuits were made by technical people with very cool manufacturing skills? Once again, these were not people that went to college. The people that went to college are the ones that design the spacesuits and design the rocket. But other people that didn't want to go to college when they graduated from high school had worked very hard when they were in school. They paid particular attention in their math classes. Did you know that your math classes are important no matter what you want to do after you're done with high school? Your math classes apply to all the different skills that you might want to be expert at later on when you're adults, whether it be cooking skills, whether it be music. Did you know that someday we're going to have musicians flying in space, and we are going to need the greatest songwriters in the world to fly into outer space and compose music that will share with the rest of humanity the coolness of outer space? That's things that only artists can do. And we're going to have dancers in space, and we're going to have athletes in space. We're going to have all kinds of people with all different kinds of skills in space, all part of the space team. Every kid in the audience has skills and interests that will be important on those space teams in the future. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to Mars. We are going to Jupiter. We're going to go back to the moon, too, before all that. And we're going to need tons of skills. And if you work real hard in those math classes, it will enable you to learn all kinds of other things easier, because what math does more than anything else is it teaches your brain how to learn new things. When I was an astronaut, I had tons of new things to learn. Thank goodness I worked hard in those math classes when I was in school, and it enabled me to learn new things that I'd never even thought about while I was in school. And here we are, we're still doing our spacewalks and fixing the telescope. It's a very complicated job. It took 5 days to repair the telescope. And you can see that our spacewalkers work together as a team. Normally, boys and girls, when you're out on a spacewalk, there are 2 of you out on a spacewalk as part of the 2-person spacewalking team. And then you have the rest of the astronauts that stay inside the spaceship, and we all work together as a team to make sure we can do these hard jobs safely and quickly and properly. And what you're looking at now is we had a problem before the third spacewalk. We had a problem with one of the spacesuits. It started to leak water. And it could have been very, very dangerous, but we worked together as a team and we fixed the problem. And we got our spacewalking team out there on the third spacewalk to replace this power control unit. You're looking at a very complicated electronic box, large electronic box, for the adults of the audience, about the size of a phone booth. And we took that out of the telescope and put a new one in. And you can see all of these crazy electrical connectors. There were 36 of them. And you can see that special pair of pliers that's being used to help with those connectors. And it was a woman in Maryland who never went to college, but she was really smart about tools, that helped the space team invent that new tool that we were going to need for a job that had never been done before, ever. This was the first time this job had ever been done, and we needed new tools and new ideas. And people can think of those new ideas easier because they worked real hard in those math classes. You know, all of the subjects you have in school are important, but if we work double hard in those math classes, it's going to enable the learning circuits in our brains to learn new things faster. And then we can learn things about stuff that we're more interested in. If you're not that interested in math, or you're not that good in math, work hard at it, because it will enable you to learn those other things faster, things that you're really interested in. It's one of the cool magic things about math that I discovered way too late in my school career. Okay, boys and girls, we are on spacewalk number 5. And what we're doing is we are putting a new radiator on the outside of the telescope, because the telescope looks at stars and galaxies and stuff like that using different types of sensors. One of those sensors is one that looks at the light that comes from stars that we can see with our eyes. We call that visible light. And then another sensor looks at infrared energy that comes from stars that we often refer to as heat. But those infrared detectors need to be cooled to a very low temperature before they can work correctly. And that's why we're putting a radiator on the outside of the telescope. That sounds like complicated stuff, doesn't it? And it is very complicated. So we study it and we try to learn it. And oh boy, it's so hard that we didn't learn it the first time. So we study it again. And finally, when we start to understand it, then we start to practice. We do our homework, and we do problems to try to make our brain understand these hard things. So now we're getting ready, boys and girls, to release the telescope. And our spacewalkers are going back into the spaceship for the very last time. They've been on 5 long, hard spacewalks, and they're closing the doors to the telescope and getting it all ready to go back into outer space. Once again, all working together as a team. Oh, wait a minute. I jumped ahead of myself a little bit. This is the radiator right here that's going on the outside of the telescope. That radiator weighs about 400 pounds. But when you're in space and things are floating, you can have like superhuman skills, superpower skills. When you're in outer space, you can move around things that are really, really big. I would like to point out something that you guys may have noticed in this movie we have about the spacewalks. Did you notice that our astronauts do not leave anything floating around in outer space? They always, when they take something off the telescope, they put it into special containers on the spaceship so we can bring it back to Earth. And do you know why they do that? Because if they leave it floating around in outer space, it becomes dangerous space debris. And maybe in an hour or 2 hours or maybe one day later, those things that are floating around in outer space might actually come back and bang against the outside of our spaceship. And that's not very good, because if they're going fast enough, they could actually punch a hole in the spaceship. I don't think there's many kids out there that think it's a good idea to punch a hole in the side of a spaceship, because then all the air goes out and you've got nothing to breathe. So we have to pick up after ourselves in outer space, just like you have to clean your room and keep your classroom clean and your desks and everything and pick up after yourself. Astronauts do the same thing. A lot of the things and the skills and the habits you develop when you're going to school and living at your house with your brothers and sisters or whatever, those are good skills that you might need later on if you're going to be part of the space team, whether you're an astronaut or whether you're a planner or a scheduler or a trainer or a builder of the spaceships or whatever. These are all good habits that you're learning right now that are going to help you later on when you're part of the space team. So you saw the satellite floating away, and you can see it in space. It's getting smaller as it gets farther away. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we got some very good news from the telescope controllers on the ground. They turned on the telescope and they opened up the door of the telescope, and they said, guess what, crew of Columbia? The telescope's working great. You guys didn't break it. And that was really good news for us. Well, now we were getting ready for the 5th step of our mission, and that's to come home safely. So we got some exercise. You know, sometimes kids say, hey, Digger, what was the most surprising thing you learned about outer space? And for me, it was how good exercise felt. In fact, I'm convinced that if all of us were in outer space, we would all be Olympic athletes, because we'd want to be exercising all the time. Exercise feels great when you're in space. It feels absolutely great. Now, I'd like you guys to take a quick glimpse of this next shot here. This is what your Earth, your planet, your home looks like from 350 miles high. And you know, when you're in outer space, it gives you a great appreciation for the wonders of God's universe. God gave us this wonderful home to live on, planet Earth. And when you're in space, you can see how fragile and small actually planet Earth is. And it inspires you to take great care of planet Earth, because it's the only place we have to live right now, really. And that's one of the objectives when you're on the space team, is to enable mankind to go out into the universe and discover all those great mysteries and wonderful adventures that are waiting for us out in God's universe. Now it comes time for us to come back to Earth, and our spaceship is really cool because it lands like an airplane from outer space. You can see us coming back to Earth. We landed in Florida at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And there we are. Our spaceship has no more fuel left. We were just a glider gliding back to Earth. But myself and my commander had practiced this landing thousands of times before we actually went into space. And this was Commander Altman's first time he had ever landed the space shuttle. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He did it perfectly. And you know why? It's because together we had studied and studied, and then we learned. And after we learned, we practiced and practiced and practiced until it became impossible for us to fail. And here we are, that's the view out the front of the spaceship. We're slowing down and we're almost stopped. About 45 minutes before this, we were going 18,000 miles an hour. And now here we are, almost stopped. And we get out of the spaceship. And boys and girls, you know how when you finish a project or something and you give it to your teachers and you want to see your teachers smile? Astronauts want to see the bosses in the suits smile when they come out of their spaceship. And there's our crew of mission STS-109 after a successful mission to the Hubble Space Telescope.
Isn't that cool, you guys? All right, let me flip this back
Now,
around.
Ms. Bielik, if we could get the slide up with the patch.
Slide with the patch. There we go. Can you...
Okay, great. Now, boys and girls, we went through, in about 15 minutes, we just went through a mission that lasted 12 days. And we were in outer space, where the littlest thing that can go wrong can cause very, very bad problems. Digger had trained for 9 months specifically for this mission, but my training for space started long before that, through astronaut training, and before that as training as an Air Force pilot, as a fighter pilot and a test pilot, and before that college, and before that school. All those things came together. You can see, Miss Bielik, that there's a lot of things that can go wrong on a space mission, a lot of things that can go wrong. But if you can come back from your space mission and you were successful and you didn't break anything and everybody came back safely. Next slide, please. There's cake.
Cake, you guys, cake.
Next slide, please, the question slide.
Friends.
Great. Now we come to the point, actually, this is my favorite time whenever I'm talking to kids, especially kids like you guys at GV Christian, because I know that you guys have been studying space, and I know that you're very creative and you come up with original ideas. In fact, Miss Bielik, that's one of the most important things, skills you can have when you're part of the space team, is to think of things that nobody has thought of before. And when you're on the space team, those ideas are welcome, and people listen to those ideas, because space is very, very hard and very, very complicated. When you're doing things in space, you're doing things that no one has ever done before. So you have to have brand new ideas that nobody's ever thought of. And one thing, the most important thing we can learn when we're in school, is how to learn quickly, how to learn new things and learn them quickly. And if I haven't already mentioned it, the magic subject in school, all of our subjects are important. We work hard on everything, but we work double hard. We work double hard at that math class. And Miss Bielik, as you know, we were discussing before the kids came in to see the movie. We were discussing that the cool thing about math is, first of all, you don't have to be good at it. You do not have to like it. You don't have to understand it all the time. There's one thing that's important. You have to work hard at it. And if you're one of those kids that math is easy and you like it, you need to go to teacher, or you need to go on the internet, and you need to find some harder math ideas to make your brain hurt, that your brain is working so hard that it actually hurts, okay? You kids like me, I didn't like math, I didn't understand it, I didn't think it was important. So for me, it was easy. Just normal math made my brain hurt. And that's where the benefit comes from, is when you work so hard and you make a mistake, and you try again, and you make a mistake. Did you know that mistakes are one of the most important parts of learning math? Because when you try really hard and you make a mistake, your brain just had to work double hard, and your brain is teaching itself how to learn new things. So all those great things we have to learn are enabled and made easier by that hard study in math. Just work double hard at those math classes. So you guys are going to challenge me with some questions, and I might not know all the answers. Actually, if I don't know the answer, I will freely admit it, and maybe we'll work together and figure out what the answer is. So, Miss Bielik, I am really looking forward to hearing some questions from the kids this morning.
Okay, we have a third grader. Tell me your name. Okay.
I say my name?
Yep.
My name is Anthony.
You say it real loud.
My name is Anthony.
Okay, and then read your question.
Did you always want to be an astronaut?
Okay, Ms. Bielik, I think the question was, thanks for that question. I think the question was, did I always want to be an astronaut?
That is correct. Did you always want to be an astronaut?
Okay, let me tell you that as most kids know, you guys go through different phases. And I always tell people, I think astronaut generally for a boy, astronaut normally comes in between wanting to be a cowboy and then wanting to be a fireman. Everybody wants to be an astronaut at some point. So of course, when I was little, I wanted to be an astronaut at some point, and then I wanted to be something else. I remember for a few years, I wanted to be a doctor. I thought that would be the coolest thing. And then I got a little bit older and wasn't thinking about those things so much. But I started when I was about in 7th or 8th grade, I started reading science fiction. Am I looking at a 7th grader right now? Was that a 7th grader that asked that question? No, 3rd grader.
What grade are you in?
Okay,
3rd grade.
You guys growing big out there in Henderson. But when I was about in 7th or 8th grade, I started to read science fiction books. Not like science fiction movies and stuff, but real science fiction books with some science. And it made me imagine about space, and it made me imagine what it would be like to be in outer space. And I guess I got interested in it. But you know what? I felt like I was not very good in school, and I felt like space was not something that I would be able to participate in. But then as I got older, Miss Bielik, I was a couple years out of high school, and I thought it would be cool to be a fighter pilot in the United States military. And I learned that in order to be a fighter pilot, you have to go to college to do that. Well, I didn't like school, and I didn't want to go to college, but I wanted to fly fighter jets so bad that I would do anything for that. So luckily, I had graduated from high school. I had a high school diploma, and I wasn't the greatest student, but I managed to get into college. And then I worked real hard for about 5 years in college, and I got into the Air Force, and I flew fighter jets. And then I discovered that my skills as a pilot were very important in terms of becoming an astronaut someday. NASA likes to hire astronauts that like to fly airplanes. Some of their astronauts. Other astronauts they hire for different skills, like if they're teachers or doctors or engineers or scientists or something like that. But they like to hire pilots too. And so it became evident to me that I could qualify to be an astronaut. And remember, I told you when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I started reading science fiction. So it was like a dream was coming true. So the answer is when I was younger, I kind of thought it would be cool to be an astronaut. But as I became older, like 18, 19, 20 years old, 21 years old, it started to become evident to me that maybe I could be an astronaut someday. So the important thing is to realize that as you go through school, in 3rd grade, you're going to want to be one thing. And then in 5th grade, you're going to change your mind. And then like in 7th grade, you're going to change your mind again. Your mind is going to keep changing as to what you want to be when you grow up. The important thing is to keep all those options open, okay? Work hard in school and make sure that you're qualified for any future opportunities. So even if a kid is certain that she does not want to go to college, she needs to work hard in school so that she qualifies to go to college should she change her mind later on. You always want to be ready to do anything. And in order to do that, you always take school serious and you work hard so that later on, if an opportunity comes up and you change your mind, you're ready to go. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's a great answer. Thank you. Good question, Anthony. All right, we have another question for you. 4th grade, over here, you guys are awesome. And 5th grade, great job. Here's another question.
When do you think we'll go back to the moon or Mars?
When do you think we will go back to the moon or Mars?
When do you think we'll go back to the moon or Mars?
When are people going to go back to the moon or Mars? This is a question where I have to guess. Okay, now, right now, NASA says that they are going to go back to the moon in the year 2024. That's going to be in 3 years. Did I hear that we're talking to a fourth grader?
She's in fourth grade.
So, young lady, this means that when you're in 7th grade, NASA says right now that we're going to go back to the moon. But, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to probably happen like when you're in, I think it's probably going to happen when you're in 11th grade. That would be my guess, when we're going to go back to the moon.
So it'll be
right
a lot
now,
of years.
I think it's very interesting to think about. Right now, the plan is that the next human being that's going to set foot on the moon is going to be a woman. And it might be one of my friends that I know at NASA right now. It'd be the coolest thing that if I'd be able to tell kids that, hey, that woman that was the first woman to ever walk on the moon, she's one of my friends. So that's one of the cool things about being an astronaut is turns out you get really cool friends. And your question about Mars, I would say that if you're in 11th grade when we go to the moon, I'm guessing that, let's say that you decide when you graduate from school, you're not interested in going to college, but you go to a technical school to learn a skill like welding or fabricating or 3D printing or one of those cool skills where you can actually build stuff. I would say when you're about 23 or 24, you might actually be building equipment that's going to be used by colonists that are going to Mars to live. So the point is, and this is for all the kids in the audience, the point is these cool things, going back to the moon, going to Mars, things like that, these are going to happen before you are even as old as your parents are, okay?
Very
These
cool.
things are going to happen for you. If you want to be on the space team, you have to work hard, work double hard at math, and take school serious and learn all the cool stuff. Not every kid needs to go to college to be on the space team, but boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen, you're going to need skills. And you're going to work double hard in those math classes so that your brain can learn new things and learn them quickly. This is going to happen. This is going to happen before you're 30 years old. You guys are the space generation. You are the space generation. Great question.
You are the space generation. Did you guys hear that? Clap once if you heard that. Clap twice. You guys are doing a great job. So what subject is our famous Mr. Digger astronaut telling you guys to really work hard at? Math. But what if you're not good at math? Do you still need to do it? What if you don't like math? Do you still do it? So, can you do great things no matter what when you get older? Okay, we have another question. I'm looking for the class sitting up nice and tall. Clap once. All right, here's our next question.
What was it like at pilot school?
What was it like in pilot school?
What was it like in pilot school? Well, as I shared with you, I was pretty old when I decided I needed to go to college. I was kind of doing some things. I was living out in California, riding around the country on my motorcycle and stuff like that, and I decided I had to go to college to be a pilot. And so I was a little bit older than the other kids in college. And when I got to pilot school, I was a little bit older than the other student pilots. But let me tell you, by then I was married to my wife, Miss Cheryl, and I was very, very serious about wanting to be the best pilot that I could. I loved pilot school. I loved it. You know why? Because my dream, my special dream was coming true. My special dream to fly fighter jets was coming true. And every day I loved getting up, even if it was 4 o'clock in the morning, to go fly those jets. I loved every day waking up and working as hard as I could until the day was over and I was so tired, all I could do was just go to sleep. I barely had enough energy to even eat. But I loved it. I loved it. I would do it again and again and again. Pilot school took a year. And when I started pilot school, we had 50 pilots in my class. And a year later, 25 of them they had to drop out from the class because things were moving too fast for them and they couldn't learn things fast enough. But luckily, I had worked real hard in school at my math, and it taught me how to learn new things, and it enabled me to make it all the way to the end of my pilot training class. And then after that, I got to fly fighter jets, and I was a test pilot. And you know, my 22 and a half years in the United States Air Force were very difficult, and I had to work very hard. But I can truthfully tell you that every single day when I woke up, I couldn't wait to get to work because I loved what I was doing. I loved it. I loved it.
That's awesome.
You guys can all have those types of futures where you love what you're doing if you give yourself the chance to meet those opportunities. Now, Miss Bielek, I know that in Las Vegas, the kids are familiar with lots of fighter jets flying around. You know, the red flag exercises that happen out there at Nellis Air Force Base. I was out there flying out of Nellis Air Force Base a lot when I was a fighter pilot. And I loved going to Nellis. It was the coolest place to fly. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if anybody has an interest in aviation, let me tell you, being a pilot is a great way to make a living. Great question. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you. All right. Next up.
How did it feel like when you found out that you were going to pilot the space shuttle?
What did it feel like when you found out you were going to fly in the space shuttle?
How did I feel when I discovered that I was going to get a chance to fly the space shuttle? Is that the question?
Yes.
Well, this gives me an opportunity real quickly sharing my personal method of setting and achieving what appear to be impossible goals. Now, wanted to be an astronaut back in my day. Did you know I was the 410th person that ever flew in space in the entire history of mankind? 410. That sounds like a big number, but that's not very many people. Now, boys and girls, when I was younger, my mom was a single parent, and I grew up in the housing projects in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we were very poor. We didn't hardly have any money. And for a kid like that to end up being an astronaut, that's kind of seems like it's impossible. But when we set our goals, we want them to be impossible. And we work hard toward those impossible goals. There's several steps toward setting and achieving those impossible goals. And Miss Bielek understands this. When you set high goals, finally, when you get close to that goal, something magic happens. And for me, I was in the Air Force. I was a test pilot, and the Air Force was going to send me to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I was going to move there with my family, and I was going to have my own airplane to fly down there in Argentina, and it was going to be great. We were really looking forward to it. You see, in my quest to be an astronaut, in my steps to be an astronaut, my life got cooler and cooler and cooler. And then finally, when I had the skills, after all those years, when I had the skills and NASA said, Captain Carey, we would like you to come and fly the space shuttle. Miss Bielek, you know what happened? I was happy, but I also felt like, well, if my dream doesn't come true, it almost doesn't matter because I'm doing such cool stuff that happened while I was working toward my impossible goal of being an astronaut. I was doing such cool stuff that it almost didn't matter. So I was happy that I would get a chance to fly the space shuttle. But you know what, Miss Bielek? it's almost like, well, this is cool, but if my dream never came true of flying the space shuttle, I would still be okay with it because I really like what I'm doing now. Yeah. That is the magic of working toward the difficult and impossible goals. You find yourself in a place that's really, really cool.
That's awesome.
So I was happy. I was a little bit scared. I was a little bit nervous because this was going to be a very hard challenge, but my dream was coming true. And I can't describe how that felt. It was wonderful. As a family, we had worked for that. So we were really happy to be going to Houston to learn how to fly the space shuttle. That's actually the first time I've ever had that question, and I'm not surprised that it came from a GV Christian school kid. Thank you.
That's awesome. What a story. Thank you. All right. We have another question.
Okay. What surprised you most when you finally got into space?
What surprised you the most when you finally got into space?
What surprised me the most when I finally got into space? Well, there's three things that happen to a rookie astronaut, a brand new astronaut, when they get to space for the very first time. There's three of the coolest things. Well, two of them are cool and one of them's not so cool. The first thing, the coolest thing, the first thing is when you look out the window of your spaceship and you look at Earth. Now, I know you guys have been studying space and you've all seen pictures that are taken by satellites of the Earth, and you've seen pictures that astronauts take of the Earth, and you've seen videos that astronauts can take of the Earth. But I can tell you, and all astronauts would agree with this, I can tell you that none of those pictures are anything as cool as actually seeing it with your own eyes. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot describe the beauty of God's Earth. God's Earth is the greatest spaceship that was ever created, ever for human beings. Someday we're going to find other types of creatures and intelligent forms of life out in the universe, and they're going to have their home planets that are special for them. But the Earth will always be special for us. And I've never seen anything so beautiful in my life. You can't take your eyes off of it. I had a friend that lived in space for an entire year on the space station, Mr. Scott Kelly. And Scott told me, he said, Digger, he said, you never, ever get bored of looking at the Earth because it's the most beautiful and the coolest thing ever. So that's number one. The number two thing you notice is that floating is cool. Floating is like super duper double super cool fun. But like anything else, you have to practice at it because you're not very good at floating when you first get to space. As a matter of fact, I would say that I kicked a lot of people in the head inside the spaceship the first couple days of my mission. Luckily, astronauts just wear socks. We don't wear shoes. And my friends kept telling me, Digger, slow down. Slow down and think about what you're doing when you're floating around, okay? So that takes a while to get used to. And then the third thing that's not so cool is, Miss Bielik, do you think I can share a secret with these guys that maybe that NASA doesn't want them to know, but I could share a special secret?
Absolutely.
Did you know that over half of all astronauts, within the first day or two after they first get to space, they get so sick that they actually throw up?
Ooh, no.
It's a special kind of sickness we call space adaptation sickness. It's not motion sickness. It's something totally different. There's kids in the audience whose tummies get sick when they're on carnival rides and rides at amusement parks and stuff like that.
Okay.
A lot of those kids would not get sick when they were in space. And then there's other kids like I was that never get sick from anything. And I got sick when I went to outer space. Someone had to give me a shot to make me feel better. But that goes away after about the third day or so, and most people start to feel really good when they're in space. So those are the first three things that happen when you're in outer space. And then there's a ton of other things that happen shortly thereafter, but that's a question for another day, perhaps later on if I get a chance to come to y'all's school.
Yeah.
So great question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elisa. That's fun. I think one of my favorite fun facts so far today is that astronauts don't wear shoes.
What?
I didn't know astronauts didn't wear shoes.
She said she didn't know astronauts didn't wear shoes.
Astronauts don't wear shoes. Well, let's think about this for a minute. If you were an astronaut and you're floating around inside your spaceship, now if you go out on a spacewalk, you're going to need special spacewalking boots. But if you're floating around inside your spaceship, think about it. Would you want to take time to put on a pair of shoes?
No.
You don't even need
No.
them. And you know what? Your socks don't even get dirty because you're not walking on anything.
That's
You're
cool.
floating. As a matter of fact, do you know what my friend Scott Kelly told me after 1 year in space? He said, Digger, he said, the bottoms of your feet get very, very soft like baby skin.
Oh.
But the tops of your feet actually get calluses on them and start to get kind of tough, because oftentimes when you're working on something, you hook your feet under something and the top of your foot is pressed up against something so that you can move around inside the spaceship and do stuff, and you're kind of like anchored. So, and then when you come back to Earth, your feet are kind of sore for several weeks because they're developing those calluses and stuff that we need when we walk around back on Earth. So astronauts don't wear shoes in a spaceship because why would they?
Yep.
Great question.
Very cool. There's 3 more questions. Are you good?
Okay, we're doing great.
Okay, here's one more.
So, if I wanted to be an astronaut in the future, how should I prepare right now to begin getting ready for that?
How should she prepare to become an astronaut right now?
Let's see. I would guess that I'm talking to a 7th grader.
5th grade.
5th grade. Okay. If I was you and I wanted to prepare right now to be an astronaut, the first thing I would work on is I would know that all of my school subjects were important, whether it be gym class, art class, music class. All of your subjects are important, but I would work double hard in math class, not because you want to be the world's greatest mathematician, but because you want to teach your brain how to learn new things and learn them quickly. Especially when you're in 5th grade, if you can teach your brain at that point to learn new things and learn them quickly, well then, young lady, you are off to the races. Now, other things you can work on in 5th grade that will be very, very important to your future career as an astronaut is work on your teamwork. Notice that when you're on a team, that there's many, many jobs to do when you're on a team. I would say the most important skill you can have when you're on a team is to work hard and to do more than your fair share of the work. Everybody on the team needs to do more of their fair share of the work in order to accomplish difficult tasks when you're working on a team. Now, young lady, if you're not the leader of the team, your job is to support the leader and help the leader as he or she makes the decisions that the team needs. If you're the leader of the team, you need to realize that that is just a role on the team, that your job is to work with people outside the team. Your job is to assess the skills that the team has. Your job is to understand everybody's skills who are on the team so that you can help the team come together and do things that nobody can do by themselves, but work together as a team. You need to be pleasant. You need to be able to get along with the other kids. You need to be able to be in situations where you're uncomfortable, but you don't complain. Nobody wants to hear anybody else complain. What people want to see is that you're smiling, you're seeing the positive in any type of situation you come up with, and be the world's greatest teammate, and remember, work double hard at math. Great question. I love that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So teamwork is important, right? Yes, teamwork is important. Okay, we have another question.
Hi. You've flown in over 35 kinds of planes. How do you remember which switch does what?
How do you remember which switch does what in each of the different planes?
How do you know what switch does what in each of the different airplanes you flew?
How do I know what switch does what in each of the different airplanes? You know, Ms. Bielik, you may have mentioned during the introduction that I've flown over 35 different kinds of airplanes. And I think it would be interesting. In fact, I would challenge each one of the teachers of these various classrooms that we're talking to this morning to show the kids a picture of the cockpit of the space shuttle. You will notice that we've got switches all in our controls. We have switches on the ceiling. There are hundreds of switches a space shuttle pilot has to learn. Now, how do you remember what each switch is for? And the answer is very simple and very basic, and I've discussed it several times this morning. First of all, you need to equip yourself long before you were an astronaut to have the skill to learn new things and do them and learn them quickly. And you all know what you have to do to develop that particular skill. And then you learn what it takes for you to learn. And what I did as a space shuttle pilot was I would look at pictures and drawings of the cockpit, and I would study. And then I didn't understand. And then I would study again, and I didn't understand. So I would study again, and finally I started to learn what the switches were because I never gave up. Even though it was hard, I never, ever gave up. And then after I learned the switches, after that came the practice. Miss Bielik, do you know what astronauts call homework? We call that practice.
Practice.
Now, the seventh graders in the audience, you guys might be getting a little bit tired of the homework that you have. Astronauts call that practice. Astronauts do homework all the time. That's what we call practice. First you study, then you study again. And if you're like me, you have to study again and again. Then you learn, then you practice. Those are the 3 steps that all astronauts go through to learn all those switches that are in the spaceship. Great question. I love it.
Good job, Carrington. Okay, this is Pat Thompson's grandson. Your friend.
Wow.
Great-grandson? No, grandson. Yeah, grandson. This is Tyshawn.
Yeah, how about that? Say hi to Grandma for me, would you? And thank her for making this possible. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, Tyshawn's grandma set this all up, so we can thank Mr. Digger and Tyshawn's grandma. He has a question, though, that is kind of 3 questions in one. So I'm going to have him read it and then answer however.
What kinds of things did you do on your space mission?
And then read the rest of them.
How many miles did you fly? How many times did you circle the Earth?
Okay, how many times did you circle the Earth and how many miles did you fly?
How many times did I circle the Earth and how many miles did I fly? Finally, we have a question that the astronaut doesn't know the answer to, but I think it was probably like 140 times around the Earth.
Ooh.
And how many days?
Around and around and around and around.
Okay, how many miles did you fly?
And how many miles? It was over 1 million. It was over 1 million miles around and around the Earth. But, you know, this brings up an interesting point during my mission. After I got to space and after we had captured the telescope, and during a day when one of my friends was outside, 2 of my friends were outside working on the telescope, I had a little bit of extra time. And I looked out the window of my spaceship, and you're not going to believe this. You are not going to believe this. But when I looked out the window, I saw Lake Mead.
What? From space?
And then, Miss Bielik, I saw Lake Mead, and I looked at my watch. By the way, I had a $6,000 watch that NASA gave me when I was flying to space, but then after I was through, I had to give it back to him, but it was cool to have that watch while I was in space, an Omega Speedmaster. So I looked at my watch after I saw Lake Mead, and then a few minutes later, I looked out the window, and I saw Washington, D.C. That's how far we had flown.
Whoa.
And then Miss Bielik, I looked about 15 minutes later, I looked out the window, and I saw Russia.
I knew you were going to say Russia.
But it was dark. It was nighttime in Russia.
Wow.
And then guess what?
What?
90 minutes after I saw Lake Mead, about the time that it takes for you guys to watch a movie, about 90 minutes after I saw Lake Mead, I looked out the window again, and guess what I saw? I saw Lake Mead.
Again? They
Did
had
you know
gone
that it
all the
only
way around.
took me about 1.5 hours to go all the way around the Earth? That's about 25,000 miles. And I was in space for almost 12 days. So 12 days of going that fast, it turns out that I went over 1 million miles. I think it was like about,
Wow.
I don't know, 1.5 million or something like that. It was a long
That's
way.
awesome.
There's one more part. What was the other question?
What did you do on your mission? Like, what kinds of things did you
What did you do? on the
do?
mission?
Okay, I had special duties on the mission. Of course, I was the pilot, so my main job was to get us safely into space and find the telescope and get us to a point where we could grab the telescope. And then my next main job was to get the spaceship ready to come back to Earth and then help the spaceship land when we got back to Earth. But that left several days in the middle of the mission. And my main job I had when I was in space, and I didn't know anything about cameras and video cameras and stuff like that, but I had to learn all that because my main job when I was in space was to make sure that we were getting lots of pictures and videos of the work that was being done on the Hubble Space Telescope. It was very important to document all that work that was being done on the telescope. And oh, by the way, I also took care of the spaceship. And you know something else I did? I helped take care of my teammates that were working very, very hard. I was making sure that they were getting enough to drink, water and tea and the types of things that they like to drink. I made sure they were getting enough food. I actually cooked their food a lot for them while they were in space. We worked together as a team. I helped my teammates make sure they were getting enough sleep and all those important things. We call that, I have a big word for this. We call that expedition behavior. Taking care of your teammates and your friends, and they help take care of you. They make sure you're getting enough to eat, enough to drink. Are you going to the bathroom enough? Are you getting enough sleep? All those simple things we take for granted here on Earth. We call those, Miss Bielik understands this, we call those sandbox skills. These are skills, young man, that you are learning right now in 3rd grade. I think I heard 3rd grade. These are skills that you are learning about right now, how to take care of yourself and how to help your friends take care of each other. And they help take care of you, and we all work together as a team. We all work together as a team. And those are the main things that kept me busy, super busy, when I was in space. And you know, Miss Bielik, I had a little bit of spare time. And do you know what I did with that spare time when I was in space? NASA made sure that we had music to listen to. NASA had movies that we could watch when we were in space. NASA put books on our computers that we could read when we were in space. But you know what I did with every spare moment I had in space? I looked out the window. And you know what I wanted to look at? I wanted to look at planet Earth. Because boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that if you get a chance to fly in space and you spend some time looking at the Earth, you will never, ever, ever feel the same again. You will be changed. And when you come back to Earth, it will become very important to you to help take care of the Earth and take care of our planet, because it's the coolest spaceship that's ever been built by God is planet Earth. And planet Earth cannot take care of herself without our help, okay? We all need to work together so that when you guys grow up and you have kids, and when those kids grow up and they have kids, planet Earth is still as healthy and as beautiful as she is today, okay? We all need to work together for this. And we have a lot of things to learn about the Earth. There's a lot we don't know about the Earth. And young man, what subject in school are you going to work double hard at to make sure that your brain can learn new things and learn them quickly? What subject have we talked about?
Math.
What
Math
subject
class,
have we
numbers
talked
class,
about?
Arithmetic, all those things. That was the best question ever. And Miss Bielik, I know we're getting toward the end of our time, but I would like to hear one question from Miss Bielik.
One question from me?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I wanted to know how many days you were in space, and you answered that. But I would say, is there a way for you to communicate with your family while you're in space?
Could you communicate with your family while you were in space?
Yes, I could. And Miss Cheryl, I would like you guys to meet Miss Cheryl. She might be mad because I'm going to put her on the camera now, but
Yeah.
Miss Bielik, I'm going to step aside here.
Okay.
And Miss Cheryl's going to tell you what happened. And don't worry about going over the hour. That's fine. But Miss Cheryl can answer this question better than anybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold on, she's coming.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, we were able to communicate. The first way we were able to communicate with him was via email. We were able to do that. And then if he stays in space over 10 days, this is the way it was with the space shuttle. If you're in space at least 10 days, NASA brings the family to Johnson Space Center there in Houston, and we get a video conference. So they sat us down in chairs, and there was just a big white screen in front of us, and all of a sudden he popped on the screen floating. And that was pretty cool for our kids, even though they were in high school for the most part. Yeah, one was middle school, one was high school. It was pretty cool to see Dad just floating there in space, and they were asking him questions, but he kept doing silly astronaut tricks like somersaults and such. And they finally just said, Dad, just try to float as still as possible. We just want to talk. But it was a lot of fun, and that's, it is a great way to communicate. I know that when we first started having astronauts living on the space station, one of my friends whose husband was up there was given a cell phone for emergencies, not just a phone call whenever, for emergencies. So she was able to keep in contact with him that way. And then they also had a video camera set up in their home so that they didn't have to go to Johnson Space Center. So that's how we did it.
That's very cool. I like that component where you get to go to the Space Center and have a video conference, and the teenagers actually wanted to talk, and Dad wanted to do gymnastics.
Exactly.
I find that fun. We thank you guys for your time and teaching us and all the things that go into preparing a presentation like that and sharing your experience with us, because this is making science and math come alive. Okay. Shh.
We
Hold your
enjoyed
clapping.
it. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. And Miss Bielik, y'all have a great GV Christian Day. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. What do you guys say?
Bye-bye.
That was great, wasn't it? Wasn't that awesome? You guys were an awesome, awesome audience. Look for your teacher. Look for your teacher. Have a great day. Have a great day, you guys. Go learn lots of math and talk about science and astronauts and everything you learned today.